Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So for this video, I want to talk about Donald Trump's executive orders, also his plans for additional executive orders. And I want to focus on their impact on Black communities and other communities of color, not only here in America, but around the world. In Donald Trump's mind, white people are the victims. That's how he views the world. You know, he wants to protect the interests of white people. He is a white supremacist. He is an oligarch. He is about promoting fascism in this country. And so I'm going to go through some of these measures and executive orders that this man has implemented. One of his executive orders entitled Addressing the Egregious Actions of the Republic of South Africa. And in that executive order, basically he is talking about restricting foreign aid to South Africa. And there are two reasons that he's doing that. Number one, there's the Expropriation Act of 2024 that deals with the massive land ownership disparities in South Africa. He's also passed this executive order because of South Africa's support for the International Criminal Court's actions against the state of Israel. So because of that, Donald Trump is trying to restrict aid to South Africa. He wants South Africa to bend the knee. He wants South Africa to bow down to him. And let's talk about this land issue in South Africa. We know that for the longest time, there was apartheid in South Africa, a discriminatory colonial system that was set up there where the white minority ruled the Black majority, where the white minority took the land from the Black indigenous people and restricted the Black people there to townships. Even today, I looked at an article that pointed out the land ownership disparity in South Africa. Under apartheid, white people owned large sections of land, and the Black majority was crowded into townships. And 63% of the land is owned by white people in South Africa. And white people make up 8% of the population, but they own 3/4 of the farms and agricultural property. Black people only own 4% of the land in South Africa. And so this Expropriation Act was designed to address that massive land ownership disparity. And again, we got to understand the context. South Africa was a Black country. And then you had these invaders, these colonizers go in the country and take the land by force and subject, Black people to all kinds of discriminatory treatment and literally take the land. And so because of that, Black people own far less land than the white minority does. And so that act was designed to address that disparity. It was designed to correct that historical wrong that took place. But in Donald Trump's mind, any kind of equity is viewed as discrimination. So because of that, he wants to impose sanctions. He is rallying behind the Afrikaners there, the colonizers, the people that stole the land from the indigenous people. That's what he's doing. And he's punishing South Africa for trying to address that inequity, for trying to address that inequality that's going on there in terms of land ownership. Now, despite the fact that you have Black elected officials there, that disparity in land ownership and wealth continues to exist in South Africa. And because the South African people are trying to address it, Donald Trump is imposing sanctions on South Africa. And also because South Africa is supporting the International Criminal Court, which pursued charges against Israeli officials and Hamas officials. Because of that, Donald Trump is imposing these sanctions. And this just shows you how Donald Trump is a man that's about inequality. He's a man about perpetuating inequality and injustice in the world. And anybody that's trying to correct the inequality that we see in the world, the inequity that we see in this world, he takes action against them, just like he is doing right here in America with these anti-DEI measures that he is imposing. And with respect to the International Criminal Court, they are trying to bring justice to the people in Gaza and to Israeli people as well. You know, there is a genocide unfolding in Gaza, you know, where tens of thousands of people have been killed by Israel, and most of them are innocent women and children. They have borne the brunt of this brutal onslaught that Israel has waged against the Palestinian people, the people of Gaza. And so the International Court is trying to hold those people responsible, accountable. It's trying to bring them to justice. And because of that, Donald Trump is trying to not only sanction South Africa, he's trying to sanction the International Criminal Court. You know, he is trying to defy the rule of law. You know, they only want laws for certain people. But when it comes to the United States and its allies, they don't want any accountability at all. They want them to have impunity to violate the human rights of people around the world, the impunity to violate the rights of the people of Gaza, impunity to commit genocide and bomb the, churches, mosques, and hospitals and homes. They want impunity to do that. They want impunity to starve the people of Palestine and Gaza. They want impunity to do that, to deprive people of medicine and food. Donald Trump wants Israel to have a green light to do whatever, to commit genocide. And because you have a court that's trying to hold people accountable and trying to render some semblance of justice, Donald Trump finds it fit to impose sanctions against that institution. And it just exposes who he is. And I'm not surprised by this, because this is a man who is lawless. This is a man who is a fraudster. This man was found guilty of fraud. This man is defying all kinds of laws with these executive orders. He is a lawless president. He's violating the Constitution. Many courts have halted his actions because they're unconstitutional. So that's just to provide full context with what's going on there. In addition to that, Donald Trump is trying to eliminate institutions that benefit the American people, like the National Labor Relations Board. He fired key personnel in the National Labor Relations Board. And there's also talk about him trying to eliminate the National Labor Relations Board. You know, he fired the general counsel, and he also fired the first Black woman in such a high position of the board. Her name is Gwen Wilcox. He fired her. And now the Labor Relations Board doesn't have the power to compel action that it usually had. And so this is going to hinder and impact unions around the country. It's going to impact the rights of workers around this country. Donald Trump ran as a populist. You know, he appealed to the people, that are struggling and all that kind of stuff with his false rhetoric. But here he is undermining workers, undermining the people that need to have their rights protected. So he's basically rendered the National Labor Relations Board powerless for now. A board that's responsible for protecting workers' rights. So while he's, getting these tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, he's trying to limit the right of the workers to organize, limit the right of the workers to push for higher wages and better working conditions, limit the right of workers to organize and unite in unions. That's what he's doing. But this is the man that ran on popularism. The other thing that he's doing is he's making the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission weak and powerless. He fired 2 key board members there. So that makes it harder for the Equal Employment, the EEOC to implement its measures, to do its work of fighting discrimination. I did a video a while ago, and I received a response from a lot of these pro-Trump people. And they asked, how is Donald Trump impacting black people? This is one of the ways that he's impacting black people. The EEOC is there to protect people from workplace discrimination. And Donald Trump is basically rendering that agency powerless at this point. The other thing is Donald Trump is preparing to issue an executive order to eliminate the Department of Education. He's trying to eliminate the Department of Education, a department that's responsible for financial aid for students, also a department that's responsible for addressing discrimination in our schools. He's trying to end that agency. And that's another example of him implementing a policy that will be detrimental to black people. The Department of Education protects students from discrimination in their schools and all that kind of stuff, but he wants to render that institution powerless. He wants to get rid of it. Another thing that he plans to do is, he's actually implementing this now, and that's to defund the U.S. ADI, the U.S. Agency for International Development. He's trying to defund that agency. That's an agency that provides vaccines around the world to developing nations. That's an agency that feeds the hungry, starving communities around the world. That's what that agency does. So he wants to eliminate that agency, an agency that literally saves lives, so that he could save a few dollars for the richest Americans, so that he can fund those tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. And the thing is, that agency only gets 0.6% of the U.S. annual spending. That's a small drop in the bucket. But Donald Trump basically is going to cut off food for the hungry and the starving. That's what he's going to do. Cut off vaccines and other health measures for people in developing countries. But this is the man that people support. This is the man that people rally behind. And the last point that I want to address is Gaza. The situation in Gaza. I touched on it earlier when I talked about South Africa and the International Criminal Court. The other point that needs to be made about Gaza is this. Donald Trump got some gullible Muslims in Michigan and other places around the country to actually believe that he was about peace in the Middle East. They actually believed that. I actually saw like a video of him on stage with these black Muslims. I mean, not black, not black. They're not black. These Arab Muslims and other Muslims in Michigan. They were rallying behind him, and they even created an organization called Muslims for Trump. And after what has happened, they changed the name of that organization. But these were imams on stage with this man. These were Muslim leaders on stage with this man, talking about they support him. And I heard one Muslim man say, well, he would never support Kamala Harris. He basically said he wouldn't support her because she's a woman and he's an Arab, and that's just the way he is. But they find themselves in a horrible situation. They helped elect a man that has been talking about expelling the people of Gaza from Gaza and pushing them into countries like Egypt and Jordan. You know, he wants them not to have any kind of right of return to Gaza. And he wants to turn Gaza into like the French Riviera. And he wants the United States to own Gaza. That's what he wants. And he even talked about the possibility of U.S. troops occupying Gaza. But this is the man that y'all thought was going to bring peace. And as Israel is violating that ceasefire agreement, he's issued a threat against, against the Palestinian people, basically saying if those hostages aren't released by Saturday or something like that, all hell's going to break loose. So this is the man that you thought was about peace. This is the man that you decided to vote for, or you decided to vote third party. This is the man that you have empowered. So this is the situation, man. Donald Trump is a despicable person. And we have to do everything that we can to fight against him. And one of the biggest things that we need to do is make sure that we are registered to vote. You know, Donald Trump is in there for 4 years. However, it will be difficult for him to pass his agenda if the makeup of Congress is different. If he no longer has a majority in the House, it will be hard for him to implement his policies. So we need to keep that in mind and organize our vote to make sure that the House no longer is dominated by these Republicans. That's what we have to do. In addition to that, we need to push our politicians to oppose these appointments that he's making, to oppose these measures that he's taking. And we need to support those organizations that are filing lawsuits to block these unconstitutional executive orders. We need to join them. We need to fund them. We need to rally behind those organizations that are doing the work. And we need to eventually get out there in the streets and protest to make our voices heard so that we can make a difference. We got to resist this man by any means necessary.